Across Ukraine's long front lines and the roads that feed them, a new kind of battlefield has taken shape. It is not only trenches or artillery positions, it is the roads themselves. Thousands of kilometers of narrow highways, rural routes, and supply corridors that carry everything Ukraine's defense relies on. Vehicles move along them every day. Military trucks, ambulances, volunteers bringing food and equipment, civilians trying to reach safety or return home. And above those roads, in recent years of this war, another threat has become constant. Drones, small, fast, and often difficult to detect until the final moments. Russian forces have increasingly relied on them to strike vehicles, supply convoys, and moving targets along Ukraine's transport network. These drones hover, circle, and dive with precision that has changed the rhythm of movement across the battlefield. So Ukraine has begun preparing a response that stretches not across a single town or a single road, but across thousands of kilometers. Officials in Ukraine have announced a plan to protect roughly 4,000 kilometers of roads with anti-drone defenses. The effort is designed to shield the routes most frequently used by vehicles moving near areas of active combat. It is a massive undertaking, and it begins with a simple idea: cover the roads, protect the movement beneath them. The concept involves installing protective structures, large net systems designed to reduce the ability of drones to strike vehicles traveling below. These nets would stretch above sections of road, forming a barrier that disrupts the flight path of drones attempting to descend toward moving targets. The roads selected for this protection are not random. They are the roads that carry life through a war zone: supply trucks heading toward front lines, medical transport vehicles moving wounded soldiers, humanitarian convoys carrying food and water, and sometimes civilian drivers traveling through regions where the sound of drones has become an everyday warning. For Ukraine, these roads are the arteries of resistance. Without them, supplies cannot move efficiently. Without them, the front lines cannot hold their shape. Without them, communities near the battlefield become isolated. So protecting these routes has become a strategic priority. The announcement of this project reflects the reality of modern warfare in Ukraine. Drone attacks have become one of the defining features of this conflict. In earlier stages of the war, artillery dominated headlines. Later, missiles and long-range strikes captured attention. But drones, small, adaptable, and relatively inexpensive, have become a persistent presence across the battlefield. They observe, they track, and when given the opportunity, they strike. Ukraine's road protection plan aims to disrupt that pattern. By covering key routes with net systems, the intention is to prevent drones from making direct contact with vehicles traveling below. In effect, the sky above those roads would no longer be open. Instead, it would become a layered barrier designed to protect movement on the ground. For the drivers who travel these roads daily, the difference could be profound. Convoys that once moved cautiously under open skies would pass beneath protective nets. Ambulances racing from combat zones could drive through sections of road designed specifically to reduce drone risk. Even humanitarian vehicles delivering aid would benefit from this protection, because every vehicle moving across those roads carries something essential: supplies, equipment, people, lives. The scale of the project is difficult to imagine at first. 4,000 kilometers. That distance stretches farther than the length of many national highway systems. It means that across Ukraine, in region after region where the war has pressed hardest, long sections of roadway may eventually be shielded overhead. Construction teams would install support structures, large netting systems would be stretched across those frames, and mile by mile the roads would begin to change, from open routes exposed to aerial threats to corridors with protection overhead. At its core, the effort reflects something deeper than engineering. It reflects adaptation. Ukraine has spent years responding to new forms of attack introduced during this war. When missiles struck energy infrastructure, the country adapted its defenses. When long-range drones appeared, new countermeasures were developed. Now, as smaller attack drones continue targeting moving vehicles, Ukraine is shaping the landscape itself to respond, changing the roads, changing the sky above them, and creating a network of protected movement across territory where every kilometer matters. At one briefing about the plan, the scale of the challenge was clear. The roads to be protected stretch through regions where the war remains active. Some pass near front lines, others connect critical logistical hubs deeper inside the country, but all of them share one common role: they keep Ukraine moving. And for those responsible for planning the defenses, the goal is straightforward. As one official put it quietly during discussions about the effort, movement keeps everything alive. Those few words capture the heart of the project, because in a war where drones watch from above, protecting movement on the ground has become one of the most important forms of defense Ukraine can build. Look around, because somewhere above, something may already be watching. Over the past several years of the war, drones have become a central tool used by Russian forces in attacks across Ukraine's battlefield and transport routes. These aircraft, often small and maneuverable, have allowed operators to observe vehicles moving along open roads and strike them with precision. The impact of this shift has been significant. In earlier periods of the war, the danger along supply roads often came from artillery strikes or ambushes. Those threats were severe, but they were tied to known positions and visible front lines. Drones changed that equation. They can appear without warning. They can circle above an area quietly. And when they locate a moving target, such as a truck, armored vehicle, or ambulance, they can descend rapidly. Because of this, traveling across exposed roads in combat regions has become increasingly risky. Drivers often move quickly. Convoys spread out. Vehicles pause under tree lines or near structures when possible, but the open stretches of road that connect towns, supply depots, and military positions remain unavoidable. Those roads must stay active. Food, fuel, ammunition, medical equipment, and personnel depend on them every day, and that is why Ukraine's plan to install anti-drone net systems across thousands of kilometers of road has become such a significant development. The project is designed specifically to address this evolving threat. Rather than relying only on air defenses or electronic countermeasures, Ukraine is physically changing the environment where drone attacks often occur. The concept is direct. Install overhead barriers. Create sections of roadway where drones cannot easily dive onto vehicles traveling below. These nets are not decorative structures. They are defensive barriers. Large mesh frameworks stretched across support posts or arches above the road, designed to disrupt the flight path of descending drones. When drones attempt to approach vehicles traveling under the netting, the barrier interferes with the attack angle. In simple terms, the nets place an obstacle between the drone and the target. The result is a roadway where drivers move beneath a layer of protection. For vehicles carrying supplies or wounded soldiers, even seconds of interference can make a difference. The protection offered by these nets may allow drivers to move more confidently through areas that previously required constant scanning of the sky. The locations chosen for these defenses are based on practical necessity. Not every road in Ukraine will be covered. Instead, the project focuses on routes that carry the most important traffic in regions near the front lines. These roads connect supply points to defensive positions. They connect hospitals to evacuation routes. They connect towns where civilians remain to larger cities where aid is delivered. Each one forms a link in the chain that supports Ukraine's resistance during the war. Without those links, the system weakens. So the plan to protect 4,000 kilometers of roadway reflects an understanding that the battlefield now includes infrastructure far from the trenches themselves. The war reaches the roads, and Ukraine's response is to reinforce them. The construction process will take time. Engineers must assess which road sections require coverage first. Materials must be transported and assembled. Support frames must be installed carefully so that traffic can continue moving while construction takes place. But once installed, the structures create a new visual landscape. Drivers traveling these protected routes may find themselves passing beneath long corridors of netting overhead. The road ahead remains open, but the sky above has changed. In many ways, these protected roads represent a new layer in Ukraine's defensive system. Traditional defenses guard cities and military positions. Air defense units track missiles and aircraft. Electronic systems attempt to interfere with hostile signals. Now, the roads themselves are being fortified because the reality of this war has shown that protection must exist not only where people live and fight, but also where they move. The project also reflects the adaptability Ukraine has shown throughout the conflict. Each stage of the war has introduced new threats. Each time, the country has responded with new methods of defense. The use of anti-drone nets above roads is another example of that pattern. A practical solution built directly in response to how the battlefield has evolved. For the drivers who travel these roads daily, the change will be visible immediately. Where there was once only open sky, there will now be a shield overhead. A reminder that even the most ordinary paths, rural highways, narrow village roads, quiet supply routes, have become part of a larger defensive effort. And for the people responsible for designing this system, the purpose remains clear. Keep the roads open, keep supplies moving, keep Ukraine connected from one region to the next. Because in a war where drones have altered how battles are fought, protecting the routes between those battles has become just as important as defending the front lines themselves. As one engineer involved in planning these protections described the goal during discussions about the project, if the roads keep moving, the country keeps moving. Those words carry a quiet but powerful meaning. Because in Ukraine today, movement itself has become a form of resistance. As the plan moves forward, the transformation of Ukraine's roads is expected to happen gradually, section by section. These roads stretch across regions where the war has shaped everyday life for years now. They link towns to supply depots, villages to hospitals, and frontline defensive positions to the rest of the country. They are not simply lines on a map, they are movement. Every truck carrying equipment, every ambulance transporting wounded soldiers, every vehicle delivering food or medical supplies depends on these routes remaining open. And in this war, keeping them open has become a constant challenge. Drone attacks have changed the rhythm of travel across large parts of Ukraine. Drivers operating near active combat areas have grown used to watching the sky. Convoys space themselves farther apart. Vehicles move quickly through exposed areas. At times, drivers pause beneath trees or buildings if they believe a drone might be nearby. The presence of drones has introduced a new layer of tension to roads that once carried ordinary civilian traffic. That is why Ukraine's plan to install anti-drone net protection across roughly 4,000 kilometers of road has drawn such attention. It represents one of the largest infrastructure adjustments undertaken during the war. Instead of focusing solely on intercepting drones in the air, the strategy aims to physically reduce their ability to strike moving vehicles below. In practical terms, it reshapes the space where these attacks often occur. Once installed, the protective netting will form overhead corridors along important transport routes. Vehicles traveling beneath those nets will be shielded from drones attempting to descend directly toward them. This does not remove every risk, but it introduces an obstacle that can interfere with the attack pattern drones rely on. The presence of these barriers can make it significantly harder for drones to reach vehicles traveling along protected sections of road. In war, sometimes the smallest disruption can change outcomes. A moment of interference, a blocked flight path, a delay of even a few seconds. Those differences matter when vehicles are carrying supplies to the front or wounded soldiers away from it. Across Ukraine, logistics has always played a critical role in sustaining defense operations. Fuel must reach generators and vehicles. Food must reach soldiers positioned along the front lines. Medical supplies must arrive where they are needed most, and civilians living near contested regions depend on aid deliveries that travel those same roads. Without functioning transport routes, even the strongest defensive positions can struggle to hold. That is why the roads themselves have become a central focus in Ukraine's effort to adapt to evolving threats. The decision to cover thousands of kilometers with anti-drone nets reflects the scale of the challenge. 4,000 kilometers is a vast network. It stretches across multiple regions where the war continues to affect daily movement. When complete, the system will create long stretches of roadway where vehicles travel under a protective barrier rather than beneath open sky. Drivers entering those sections will immediately notice the change. Above them, the net structures will extend from one support point to another, forming protective corridors that follow the path of the road. From a distance, these structures may resemble a canopy stretching across the landscape, but their purpose is entirely practical. They exist to interrupt attacks, to make the roads safer for the vehicles that rely on them, and to ensure that movement across Ukraine's battlefield regions continues even as drone warfare intensifies. For many people traveling these routes, the difference will be psychological as well as physical. Knowing that a layer of protection exists overhead may allow drivers to focus more clearly on the road ahead rather than constantly scanning the sky. That sense of security matters in environments where every journey can carry risk. For Ukraine's defense planners, the project reflects an ongoing effort to adapt quickly to the conditions of modern warfare. The battlefield is not static. Threats evolve. new technologies appear, and each new challenge requires a response. In this case, the response is not only technological but structural, changing the landscape itself to counter the methods used by Russian drone operators. The roads remain the same paths that communities have relied on for years, but above them, something new will exist. A shield designed to protect movement. As the installation of these defenses continues across the country, the network of protected routes will gradually expand. More vehicles will pass beneath the netted corridors. More supply convoys will move through areas that once felt exposed. And the roads connecting Ukraine's towns, cities, and frontline positions will continue carrying the lifelines that sustain the country during war. At its heart, the project reflects a simple understanding of what keeps a nation functioning during conflict. People must be able to move, supplies must be able to move, help must be able to move. And protecting those paths has become an essential part of Ukraine's defense. During discussions about the importance of these routes, one official captured the feeling in a short remark that echoed through briefings and planning meetings. The roads carry everything. It is a quiet statement. But in the context of a war where drones watch from the sky and convoys move through uncertain territory, those words hold deep meaning. Because as long as the roads continue to carry what Ukraine needs, the country continues to stand.